Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Kosietu. I'm from the Research Capacity Development Unit. I would like to welcome each and every one of you for taking your time to attend today's workshop titled Critical Evaluation Skills for Research Proposal. This workshop is organized for the Faculty of Arts, Design, and Architecture. So, as I've mentioned, I'm Kosietu. I'm from the Research Capacity Development Unit. Before we can go forward or introduce our facilitator, I would like to notify or let you aware that this workshop is recorded. This is for the purpose of keeping the record of this workshop, as well as to share with all the attendees and those colleagues who have not attended the workshop to access the recording as well as the presentation at the later stage. We will also be sharing this recording with the Faculty of Art because this workshop is organized for them. Before we can move forward, I'll also like to go through some housekeeping rules. Please feel free to use the chat to ask questions or raise your hand to engage in discussion. We encourage an interactive and collaborative environment, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts or experiences. I will enable all your mics. Please make sure that your mic is muted when you are not speaking or when you are not asking any question. However, you are more than welcome to raise a hand if you do have a question. I will notify our presenter or facilitator that someone has raised a hand. Therefore, you can go ahead and ask your question. Alternatively, you can type in your question under the chat or under the Q&A, and at any time, I will stop the facilitator to attend to your question. We do have colleagues from the Faculty of Art, so some of the questions they can answer those questions directly. So colleagues from Art, please assist us in terms of answering some of the questions that our attendees might have. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our facilitator, Dr. Lorenzo David, by going through his bio. Dr. Lorenzo David is currently a coordinator at the Research Capacity Development Unit at the Postgraduate School. Dr. Lorenzo David was recently awarded a PhD in biochemistry for his assessments of transferring tech gold palladium and gold palladium bimetallic nanoparticles and their potential for anti-cancer drug delivery at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. By adapting a holistic approach to education, Dr. Lorenzo hopes to inspire students to achieve personal and academic success with a hands-on and learner-centric approach to value-based learning. That was Dr. Lorenzo, colleagues, our facilitator. We thank you, Dr. Lorenzo, for taking your time in facilitating today's workshop. We look forward to a productive and insightful session. Before I can hand over to you, Dr. Lawrence, I would just like to make a final announcement that I will be posting on the chat for a feedback evaluation, which will be shared on the chat. We ask you, colleague, to fill that in. It takes about less than 3 minutes. It help us in terms of providing feedback to our facilitators and also to improve our service delivery for postgraduate school, which includes the postgraduate student, supervisors, PDRF, and researchers at large. So we urge you, colleagues, to take your 3 minutes and fill that feedback in, and we will share the feedback as well with our facilitators and keep it in our records for better service delivery. So any suggestion, colleagues, is welcome. If you suggest a workshop or title that you want us to provide, you are more than welcome to make suggestion or propose a title or a workshop that you would like or you would like us to offer, probably in the next semester or in the first semester of next year, anytime. So we are open for discussions. And we are open also for department collaboration. So if your department wants to collaborate in terms of offering a workshop, we are open for that. So without further ado, I'll now hand over to our facilitator, Dr. Lorenzo David. Thank you once again. I now hand over to you. You can begin the session. Thank you, colleagues, once again for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Nkosi, and welcome, colleagues. I hope that you all are well. Firstly, I'd actually like to thank Professor Harvey for agreeing for us to facilitate this workshop, and I hope that it's going to be something that would be beneficial. Prof, if there is anything else that you would like us to discuss, as this is a 1 hour session, we try to cover some of the key elements. But if any members of the audience or even Prof, if you feel there's something that we can go further in detail, we'd be happy to set up another session, but I will discuss with you, Prof. But once again, thank you all for joining us for this session. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm just going to share my screen. Nkosi, can you please let me know if once you're able to see and that the slides are transitioning once I'm in presenter mode.
Yes, Dr. David, I can see your screen. Colleagues can even confirm with the thumbs up if you can see Dr. Lorenzo's presentation.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so once again, welcome colleagues to today's session, which is titled Critical Evaluation Skills for Research Proposals. And this is in collaboration with the Faculty of Art, Design, and Architecture. So you will see throughout this presentation, we try to focus on some of the key areas in how do we go about evaluating a proposal and looking beyond the more superficial aspects such as language or grammar to delving a bit deeper into the content itself. What are some techniques that we can use and maybe even just refresh our own memory in many cases when we are reviewing a proposal? So some of the key areas of this presentation, we've got them up on the screen. So I'd first like to discuss, and I think this will be overarching in terms of how do we, or understanding how to critically evaluate a research proposal, as well as how do we provide effective feedback, because I feel that this is quite important in terms of improving the proposal quality. Sometimes when we read a proposal, or be it a journal article or even a thesis, the feedback that we give, we need to be able to translate exactly instructions, shall we say, or guidance to the student in terms of what areas they can improve on. So I think the manner in which we're providing this feedback is equally as important to the feedback itself. Then we'll go on to defining what critical evaluation is. Basically, in terms of a proposal, what is the evaluation criteria? Some academic writing strategies. Then we're going to touch on a bit of critical reading, as well as going to a bit more in depth in terms of giving and receiving feedback. And lastly, Prof, I hope it's okay, but I just added a slide in terms of supervisor student publication practices. And this is just from some conversations we had with other faculties as well. So I thought it may be a bit useful in this presentation as well. So a good starting point would be what makes a strong research proposal. I think for us to have a clear idea of something to benchmark against would obviously be important. So I think some of the key factors that we've identified would be it has to have a clear research question or a creative inquiry. There needs to be substance to this proposal. Whenever we speak to students and we hear quite often the term is, we don't want students to do a research project for the sake of doing it. There needs to be something deeper, especially when you're moving up towards PhD. So a clear research question or a creative inquiry, there also needs to include a strong conceptual framework. And this obviously is something that we will evaluate. And as each of us are based in, we have different areas of expertise, we would be best placed to review the concepts in a particular research proposal. I think another important factor would be critical engagement with the literature. Is the student able to critically engage with the literature? Are they reading widely? Are they referencing correctly? These are some aspects that actually strengthen our proposal. And then we go on to a well-articulated and designed methodology. So obviously this is going to vary between different faculties in terms of what the prescribed methodology is going to be, as well as within departments. But I think the way in which a student is presenting, this is my plan in order for me to conduct the study. I think the way we evaluate is going to be important. And something which myself as a student, I didn't think too much when I was doing my studies would be a realistic timeline and feasibility. I know when I entered into PhD, I wanted to do this fantastic project and it was something I was very passionate about. But after discussions with my supervisor, I actually realized even 3 years would not have been enough because obviously one sometimes protocols are dependent on what you're doing a previous protocol. So timeline and feasibility in terms of what is the cost going to be are key factors as well for us to consider in a good research proposal. So I think it's important for us to start off with some critical skills required when evaluating a research proposal. And even though these are up on the screen, I understand that many of us and many people who have reviewed these proposals will possess these. So I think the first one will be analytical thinking. And this is something that obviously, if you at a university, you would have experience with this in terms of critically thinking and analyzing what you're reading in front of you, as well as attention to detail. Some from a student's perspective, and I think this is going to be a common theme that we see throughout this presentation, is that we sometimes need to view it from the perspective of a student. Students sometimes would just want to get through the process and they may not pay attention to detail. So the onus is upon us to actually focus in to see where we can guide them correctly. Obviously, knowledge of academic standards, what is required by the department, what is required by the faculty, or even your research group. Does it align with similar projects which have been done previously? And obviously, we use that to benchmark as well. And I think an important aspect would also be constructive feedback abilities. Like we've been mentioning, your ability to deliver good constructive feedback that can guide the student is actually essential in allowing them to improve the next draft of any document. So this can be your thesis or it can be your journal article and obviously your research proposal as well. So by discussing this a bit more, I hope that we can shed some light into some of the new approaches and that have been discussed and that we've actually attended some workshops and some conferences where this has been quite a hot topic in terms of how do we communicate with students in terms of our feedback, because what has been done many years ago, if we look at maybe 20, 30 years ago, the manner in which feedback was given compared to today, it actually has to be different because we have to be catering to a different generation, shall we say. So the way in which we communicate needs to be tailored to that. So for many of us who've reviewed research proposals, I think we'll be able to identify a few common issues that arise throughout this. And I think the first one would be lack of focus or scope. And this speaks to the fact that, in my opinion, that the student is either unsure of what exactly they're expected to do, or they're not reading widely enough. And I think this is the first indicator in terms of how are we going to guide the student? Are we going to ask them, to make these changes, or are we going to request them to go and maybe read up a bit more and, come back with their next draft, referencing a bit more and providing more detail? I think something that sometimes is overlooked by students would be their alignment between their questions as well as their methodology or their research aim, and I think explaining to them in terms of the processes of each. Your methodology allows you to answer the research questions. It's a method in which you are going to get your data. So I think improving clarity here would actually go a long way. We notice, especially when students come in, maybe they're new to academic writing, they feel that they have to make the work sound complex. And this is something that I say in many presentations. It would be, we understand that you have to find a balance when it comes to academic writing or any academic document. You need to use formal language. We understand this, but formal does not have to be complex. At the end of the day, we want the students' research and by extension our own research to be as widely accessible to the largest group of people possible. We want many people to understand it. So I think guiding the student in terms of, you are able to write simpler, but still within the confines of in a formal setting. And something, the last point would be missing citations or poorly reviewed literature. Students generally tend to, especially coming in honors, excuse me, honors or masters, even sometimes, citations does not seem to be very high up on their list of things to do. So I think us providing proper guidance in terms of this would actually go a long way. So looking at some of the common issues at least gives us a starting point into when we're looking at a proposal, what are we looking for? So if we convert this in terms of a plan of action, in terms of going through a proposal, the first one would be, is there scope? Can I clearly understand what this project is about? Is it providing, some background? Is it providing a problem to the research, or basically some sort of positive outcome? What is the aim of it? The next one is we can go through the research questions as well as the methodology and see, do they align well? Where can we guide the students? Where can there be some misconceptions or misunderstanding, maybe in their own understanding in terms of what are the functions of each of these? When it comes to obviously the overuse of jargon, we can look, is a student overly complicating things? And this brings in a bit of a controversial topic at the moment, which would be the use of AI. So I think, one of the buzzwords at the moment is actually AI and its application in research and university setting. And what we're seeing more often than not is that students are using it to the point of actually writing their complete work. I think that, AI is a powerful tool, but I think the onus is upon us to actually guide them in terms of how they're using it. So in this case here, if we look at the implications of using AI, or rather, we would understand how a student would generally write. So I think we have to use our judgment here. While we can't, obviously, there's no policy in place at the moment. So while we can't, and we would never want to just accuse a student, I think it would be good to guide them in terms of, if you are using any of these tools, especially when you, for a qualification, I think it should be limited, and I think you should be very careful. At the end of the day, we want the student to produce their own work, because through this research study, they need to develop their own critical thinking skills, which will be used for higher degrees. And then obviously an easy one for us to pick out would be in terms of, are there citations missing? Are they actually, making statements or, providing statistics, whatever it may be, but not providing the citations to back it up as well. So these are some key areas that we can identify. So when it comes to, and I'm just going to say in general, any academic document, I think critical evaluation, we all know that critical evaluation is key. But if we break it down, what exactly is critical evaluation? So a simple definition would be, it is active, objective analysis of a proposal's strengths and weaknesses. Essentially, it needs to be unbiased in terms of when we are reviewing this. Now, critical evaluation, yes, when we think of this, often the first thing that pops to mind is, I need to point out all of the weaknesses in this particular proposal. But if we take that back to in terms of feedback and providing feedback to the current generation, we also understand that they also need to see where they're going right. We can't just point out what they're doing wrong. So if they have written a particular paragraph and you think it's very well structured and it's well written, maybe put in a comment there to say, you know what, this is well written, or I like the structure, I like the flow. And then what this does, beyond just, giving the student a bit of confidence, it also provides them with a framework in which to maybe modify subsequent sections. So they understand the research style, they understand the writing style rather, and they can make those changes much more easier. The next point would be, it ensures research is rigorous, logical, as well as credible. So by us critically evaluating these sections, we obviously are testing the research itself and allowing and ensuring that whatever is being produced is of a high standard and meets the standards of both the department, the faculty, as well as UJ as a whole. And the last point here would be, it identifies unclear arguments, gaps, and biases before the study begins. And I'm just going to speak from the perspective of a student. When I was writing my research proposal, my project was given to me, well, the broad project was given to me, and I was just asked to write this proposal. And I think if I look at the start of the proposal versus the end, my understanding of what exactly needed to be done was, it was quite different, even though I actually had accomplished everything that was in the proposal. So I think as much as we are evaluating this proposal, I think it's also an opportunity for us to clear up any misconceptions or any misunderstandings that the student may have in terms of their approach. So by critically reading, we are able to identify clear arguments. We can generate discussion with the student. And by doing that, we're able to improve clarity in their end. Obviously, in terms of identifying gaps or biases before the study begins is also key factors as well. So when it comes to evaluating a research proposal, we've split it up into a few different sections. And I think the first one is going to be more at the, for lack of a better word, I'll say the superficial level in terms of how does it read? How is the flow? How is the structure? Is it, coherent in terms of what they're saying? So when we're looking at this, the first point we'll look at is in terms of clarity. Is there a clear, concise statement of the problem? Am I able to read it, even from a layman's perspective, and understand exactly why this study is necessary? Now, clarity also goes on in terms of how the student is writing. Are they using easy language? Are they using simple language? Are they clearly discussing the problem? And am I able to logically understand their argument in this proposal? The next one would be logical coherence. So each faculty, we understand, will have a specific structure in terms of what they require from their research proposal. So I think this is the easy one for us to identify would be, is there an organized structure? Does each section flow logically? As well as, is the student able to link sections, especially in their writing? Now, when it comes to our PhD studies, we understand that originality is obviously something which is required. So when we are reviewing a research proposal for a PhD student, we need to also question, does it contribute to new knowledge or does it fill a gap? And if it does not, then we need to go back to the student and obviously discuss this further. I do understand that a student will not submit a research proposal without having a meeting with their supervisor in terms of, fleshing the project out. But I think these discussions that we have following feedback is actually equally as important. Then we go on to the research questions or your hypothesis, and this obviously would depend on the faculty that you're in. Are they well formulated? Does it align well, once again, with the study, with the area, etc. This will move on. Okay. So the second part of our evaluation criteria would be the literature review. So as we're going through this, we understand that as we're reading the student's literature review, there needs to be a thorough, relevant review and critical synthesis of sources. And this is something which students may not completely understand. And obviously their first draft compared to their final draft will be should be vastly different depending on the student. So when we are reading this and when we are evaluating it, we need to see, are they engaging deeply with the material? Are they reading widely? If you've given them guidelines in terms of the date range of papers for them to review, because obviously in many fields, we want them to review the latest materials. So we'll tell them between, the last 5 years or maybe the last 10 years is as far back as you go. And obviously, if you are quoting a particular theory or let's just say a rule that was developed 20, 30 years ago, you have to reference the original source. The next point is going to be the methodology. And we need to understand, is there appropriate design as well as the methods for the questions themselves? Now, this will generally come out from discussions with that we've had previously with the student, but it needs to be clear and concise in the research proposal. And the reason being is obviously they're going to translate this across to their thesis as well. In terms of their feasibility, once again, is it a realistic timeline? You may have discussed a project with a student, but they may feel that they want to. We've had cases where the student feels they want to actually add on certain sections because they feel that it's not enough for them to get the degree. So, is it in terms of realistic in terms of the timeline? Do we have the budget for it? What are the resources? Are they easily available, or the scope? And these are things that we need to review as well. And the last point would be ethical compliance. And this is just a general statement that I put up here, and obviously it depends on the department. So depending on the type of study that you're doing, we understand that many departments would require ethical clearance, especially if you are working with, let's just say, if you're conducting interviews, etc. So we need to ensure that this is actually present in the research proposal as well. So at this stage, I'd just like to stop. I've been talking for quite a few minutes, and I just want to make sure that I just check if there's any questions or any points that I can clarify, or maybe even some points of discussion that someone would like to bring up before I move on with the rest of the presentation. I think Ms. Nkosi can just monitor the chat to see if there's anything. If not, then I will quickly move on to the next slide.
Yes, Doc, there is nothing at the moment from the
Okay.
chat and from under Q&A. So
Okay.
colleagues, if you do have a question or any input, just type in under the chat or just raise a hand and unmute your mic. I've enabled everyone's mic at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Nkosi. Excuse me. So in terms of academic writing strategies, I just thought this would be a useful slide to add in here. In terms of the first thing we'd look at is obviously going to be structure. Is it well structured and well argued writing? And this is obviously, we understand it is a process. So we don't expect our students who's coming in at honors level to write in perfect academic tone, shall we say. But if we go a bit deeper from that, we can see what are the areas to focus on. We've highlighted this a few times. The first one's going to be clarity and conciseness. The student needs to be, or the proposal needs to be precise. It needs to eliminate unnecessary words. And we see through writing consultations, we see some trends which emerge. Students like to use in order to, such as these types of examples. And I think at this point here, when we are reviewing these proposals, we can actually provide the feedback, and obviously it saves us a lot of time in terms of our thesis as well. Something which is a bit more tricky for students to understand would be the use of formal tone. Like we said previously, students often associate that academic writing needs to be formal, and therefore formal needs to be complex. But I don't believe that relationship, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think that relationship directly does exist. I think that we can actually explain to the students in terms of the way in which they're writing. So there should be no contractions, obviously, when they're writing an academic document, and they should avoid writing, obviously, in the second person as well. And should actually say the first person. Moving on, we understand that in terms of coherence, there needs to be use of clear topic sentences, transitions, as well as a logical paragraph flow. And I think there is quite a bit of resources, if you'd like to direct your students, available on the Moodle communities in terms of sentence construction, writing for academia, etc. So something which has been brought up in previous workshops would be critical reading techniques. And at first, when we think of critical reading, or rather, let me say, critical reading actually forms one of the foundational aspects that we need to engage with when it comes to reviewing a research proposal. So how do we go about doing this? We understand when we're reading a document, when we're reading a journal, obviously we're trying to understand and make connections. So this is an example of it. But I think if we put it into a framework, the first thing that we would do is preview. Um, Put it into context. When you are researching on a new area, you're not going to jump straight into, complex journal articles. What you're going to do is try and get a basic understanding of what this particular research area involves. So I think when it comes to our research proposals, this would be something that we can do as well. So the first thing is preview. So, in the case, I've just put skim the abstract here, but in the introduction, the headings, the figures, to grasp basically the overall structure. This gives you an idea, is anything missing? Are there areas, and this will give you obviously an overarching view of it. Annotate actively. So as we're going through the research proposal, we will put in, I would believe that we would put in comments for the students. So basically, we will highlight some of the main ideas and the keywords, as well as put questions down in the margins. And this is obviously for our own review as well. The next point would be to evaluate the arguments. So we want to identify basically the arguments that the students are making. We want to see if they are based in solid literature, as well as check for logical flow, as well as the gaps. So following this, it is basically summarizing questions. So once we have an overarching idea of what the study involves, or rather how the proposal is written, then we go on, we look through our questions, we evaluate some of the arguments and view them from different perspectives. We try to obviously look for gaps that occur in the research. Then we move on to summarize and question, which means after reading a section, we will, well, you don't have to paraphrase it, but you would have an understanding of it, and then what do the authors assume and what is missing in that case. So when it comes to critical reading techniques, I think it is something that is actually very important for us to work on actively. Obviously, many senior members of staff can do this with ease, but for many of us as emerging academics, it is a skill that we're going to have to learn, and we can only learn this through obviously reading quite widely as well. So what is commonly said is that in order to write well in academia, you need to read good literature and read good journals as well. So that's a good exercise for us as well. Okay, so we come to the slide on giving and receiving feedback. So we've been through the research proposal and we've evaluated it in terms of, is it academically sound? Has the student read widely? Have they referenced correctly? Do they follow the correct structure? We ticked these boxes. And now it comes to the point where we need to translate our feedback into a way that the student is going to understand. And I think at this point, we need to maybe each ask ourselves, what do we believe the point of feedback is? Is it just to correct? Is it to inform? Is it to guide? And from that point, obviously, we can look at areas that we may need to actually improve on. So, like I said, there's been a lot of talk in terms of feedback, and there was actually a talk recently which focused on feedback as a dialogue. And this was a study that was done and actually showed that the way in which we obviously are providing the feedback to the student actually, or rather dramatically influences the outcome of how the student actually makes these changes. So if we each look back to when we may have received feedback in our previous studies, if you got a comment such as rewrite or wrong, or something along those lines, it's simple one-word things, but you're not exactly sure what you need to rewrite. So if we look at it from the perspective of the student, once again, we need to guide them. So in that light, we need to be specific and we need to be constructive. That does not mean that we can't highlight certain areas which need to be improved, but I think the way in which we're approaching it is very important. So if we are reading a particular paragraph, and let's just say we want to tell them to include a reference or use a more recent reference, or to write more clearly and concisely, then we will make our comments specific, obviously, to that sentence, and obviously be constructive, maybe even provide them with suggestions. I understand that this takes a lot of time, but I believe it will actually save us a lot of time when it comes to the thesis as well. Another point would be to focus on the work and not the person. So we need to be as unbiased as possible in our feedback. And obviously, we all will treat every student as the same. So we need to balance the praise with actionable suggestions as well. So instead of us just telling the student, you should do this or you should do this, you should make this change or this is not correct for academic writing, I think the method of posing questions for the students actually it works quite well. So by asking them something along the lines of, have you considered this approach or have you considered this perspective? It actually causes them to engage with their own writing a bit more and think about their writing more critically. And by doing this, we obviously are developing their own skills as well, which is obviously what we want to do. So this point we added in here based on the fact that, the current approach is feedback as a dialogue, meaning that I will receive a piece of writing or a proposal from a student. I will go through the proposal, I will critically read, critically analyze, provide the feedback. And generally, what happens after that would be I would, if I put it in context of writing consultations, a student will send me their chapter, I will read through it, I will provide the feedback, and then I will email it back to them. But then I will also schedule a meeting shortly after that. Reason being is sometimes being able to explain our comments, will provide further context for the students as well. And I understand that in an academic setting, finding time to do this will be difficult, but I believe that these approaches will actually end up saving us a lot of time when it comes to obviously later on in terms of their journal articles, their thesis, etc. So when we are receiving feedback from the student as well, in terms of this is a conversation, we need to be able to listen, ask clarifying questions and don't take, I don't think any student will criticize, but we just put this in here, don't take criticism personally. Feedback is basically meant to help us improve, shall we say. And the last point obviously ties into this which would be feedback as a dialogue. So when we are providing feedback to the student, I think the structure has shifted from previous years to now, where previous years, if I went into my supervisor, they would tell me you have to make changes A, B, and C, and that would basically be the end of the conversation. However, today we see what is working for students would be if it is a discussion. So in this regard here, what we would, or what is being done currently is that a student comes in and you would discuss your feedback in terms of what the student thinks about it as well. Now, understand that you are the supervisor, you are the person who is in charge of this project, but I think also trying to see things from the student's perspective will allow us to understand a bit better why they're writing the way they're writing, why they approaching the study from a particular view, perspective, etc. And one of the last slides would be in terms of publication. So this was a request that came in from one of, let's put this up here, from one of the faculties, and I thought it would be important for us, or it would be useful for us to just add this in here. So if, as a supervisor, we are planning on obviously writing a publication or having the students' work published, then there's some key areas that we would, need to address. The first one would be for us to plan early in terms of let the student know that you want this work to be published. Obviously, if you get the results you're looking for, and we discuss the goals for publishing together at the start of the timeline. So this would be, what journals are you targeting? And obviously, this is going to go into your planning process as well. So the next one would be authorship agreements. This is a bit of I need to be careful here, but in terms of, let the student understand, have a clear understanding in terms of who's going to get the first authorship, etc. A writing timeline, which is something important that we can sit and develop with our students, would be to set milestones for draft as well as review sessions, and take into consideration that reviewing a journal article does take quite a bit of time. So, that can go into our planning as well. Then we go on to take into consideration the processing time by the journal. So if a student is, let's just say, a PhD student and they need to graduate, they need to write a paper, we need to take into consideration how long does the journal actually take, the journal that we're targeting, what is their general turnaround time. Sometimes they can be as much as 3 months or more. So this needs to be taken into our planning process. And obviously, we need to work ahead of that as well to prevent anything from delaying at the end. And at the end would be the document contribution. So basically, if we have maybe multiple students working a particular project or a particular paper, then it would be important for us to keep shared records of the tasks as well. And the last one would be clarity and ethics. So we always will follow institutional authorship as well as our ethics guidelines as set out by UJ as well. And I think in terms of what constitutes an author, I think that would be an important conversation to have with the students. There are specific guidelines in terms of if an individual's name is going to be listed on a paper, they need to meet obviously certain criteria. They need to be involved in every process from conceptualization to design to carrying out the research to analyzing the data, writing the paper, etc. So if you can just make that conversation clear with the students as well. And just to wrap up, when it comes to evaluating a research proposal, I know that many faculties would have a structured rubric, or you can even create your own checklist in this regard in terms of does it meet the requirements of maybe proposals that have been passed previously. It is important for us to ask probing questions. Example, is the method appropriate for the aim, etc. And we need to be able to separate content critique from our based on personal opinion. We need to be unbiased, and I know that all of us would be, but I thought it's just important for us to add this in. And one of the key factors, once again, would be for us to balance criticism with constructive suggestions. So we need to find a balance in terms of we can't just tell the student everything that they're doing wrong. Obviously, we will highlight it, but I think in terms of their own development, it's important for us to tell them what they're doing right. And in doing so, hopefully the subsequent drafts that we get of the research proposals, journal articles, as well as their thesis will be of a higher standard and thereby save us time as well. So it is a very short presentation. I do apologize for that, but at this stage, I'd just like to open up the floor to any questions and contributions, and then I will also hand over back to Mr. Nkosi. So thank you all for your attendance, and I look forward to hopefully some discussion on the topic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lorenzo, for such a very informative presentation. Colleagues, if you do have any question or if you do have an input or contribution, this is now the right time to just unmute your mic and make your contribution. Alternatively, you can do so under the chat by just typing in your question. I see there is a hand up by Prof. Harvey. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture, I would just like a moment to thank Dr. Lorenzo for this very informative presentation. I thought it was quite valuable. It was also good for me as an experienced supervisor to also sit back and just recap a few points. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. We appreciate those kind words.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that. Colleagues, anyone with a contribution or a question, you can just raise a hand or just unmute your mic, or alternatively just type under the chat. In the meantime, I have shared the feedback evaluation. We kindly request you colleagues to take your 3 minutes and fill that feedback in. It helps us in terms of improving our service delivery, as well as to give feedback to our facilitators for taking their time so that they can reflect on the areas they can improve on, or what are they doing best or better in terms of their presentation offering. So thank you for that, colleagues. And I now request hands or any contributions from you.
I think while we're waiting for if anyone has a question, I think it'll also be quite interesting to find out, hopefully someone from the audience, would be what has been in terms of feedback. So if you have, let's just say, been reviewing proposals for a while, you've had this interaction with students, have you noticed a change in terms of how you need to construct your feedback to students? So I think, while the information that we're presenting is good in terms of, this is what the recent literature and these are what the recent studies are actually providing, maybe some actual personal experience in terms of what have you found that works best for you, or maybe some aspects of a research proposal that you specifically look for that allows you to ensure that obviously the student is handing in a proposal that is of high quality. So once again, any discussion from the audience would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Seems like I don't see any questions or contributions. Dr. David, from the chat or from our participants. Colleagues, if you do have a questions or contribution, just unmute your mic and ask your question or make your contribution.
Okay, thank you, Nkosi. I think with your permission, we can probably give it a little while, like a minute or so more, if there's any questions, and if not, I think we can give some time back to the staff on this Friday afternoon.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, colleagues, for taking your time in attending this workshop. We will be sharing a presentation as well as the recording with the faculty, as well as it will be uploaded to our RCT management system, which is the platform that is available under UJ-ULink. And then under services, the last option is RCT-MS. That is the platform which we now providing all our services, which includes the workshops that we are currently providing, as well as the events that we are providing, which includes the 3MT, VYT, and the annual conference. So all the information is in that platform. You just register your profile, either if you are a staff member or a student, or a PDRF, your profile, you just register your profile and you'll be good to access all the resources. You can even download your own certificate of attendance. Just after you have attended the workshop, you just download the certificate of attendance and be able to access all the recordings of the previous workshop without requesting from us. So that is the platform that we are providing. And the writing consultation is currently under review. So as soon as it's available, and then we will let everyone know that now for writing consultation, you can book via the management system. But in the meantime, we're still using the link which is available on the postgraduate website under RCT. That is whereby you can find the research writing consultation, where you can book a writing consultation with one of our facilitators, which are available for online and on-site as well. So with that being said, colleagues, thank you so much. And remember to fill out the feedback evaluation form, which I've just shared under the chat. We will really appreciate your input or your feedback. Thank you so much to Dr. Lorenzo, as well as to Prof. Harvey for organizing this kind of workshop. We do hope and believe that colleagues who have attended, they have learned something that they can share with their students or with the colleagues who didn't attend this workshop. Thank you so much from the faculty as well as to our presenter, Dr. Lorenzo. Before we can officially end the session, I don't know from you, Dr. Lorenzo, do you have any last words, or Prof. Harvey, before we can officially end the session?
Yes, can I say something? Is that okay?
Yes, Prof, you can go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, just to let you know that we have done a survey on the needs of colleagues, and but any of my colleagues that are here, they know that they can approach me to make suggestions for any workshops or anything of that sort, and I will definitely engage with Dr. Lorenzo as we normally do and collaborate in order to help the faculty as well. So please just, colleagues, reach out to me if you want any specific workshop. And I also know that I will be drawing on that information from your surveys as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. We really do appreciate you're always willing to collaborate and to engage with the session. So thank you for that. Just one last thing I'd like to say, colleagues, before we leave. So we do have quite a few workshops which are upcoming, but the one that I'd like to actually maybe bring to your attention would be we have some workshops on AI. And I think, we've been actually speaking to a lot of the faculties on this in terms of we understand that AI is being used more and more by students, obviously throughout universities and throughout the world. But I think it's equally as important for us to be kept up to date in terms of, what is it doing, and how students are using it to sometimes even write. So I think some of the workshops we have coming up could be quite important in terms of allowing you to stay ahead. Yeah, so we hope to see you at those workshops. But other than that, thank you all so much for attending. We really appreciate your support, and we hope to see you at future workshops. But that's it for me. Thank you, Nkosi.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to Dr. Lorenzo. I now officially end the session. Colleagues, you can have a great day further. We really appreciate your attendance and taking your time to attend today's workshop. Thank you so much to our organizers, Prof. Harvey, as well as to Dr. Lorenzo David for facilitating and organizing this kind of workshop. I now officially end this session. Have a great day further. Thank you.